Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the White Lake Township regular board meeting, June 13th, 2017. I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Liz Smith, absent. Andrea Voorhees,
Present.
Mike Paul.
Here.
Scott Ruggles,
Here.
Mr. Roman,
Here.
Mr. Lilly, sir, Mr. Cowell.
Here.
One member absent.
Okay, I'm looking for approval of the agenda or changes. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to add a couple items to the agenda. One be the sale of property, or the purchase of property, I'm sorry, and that will be item 11F. Also, I have a new listing of bills dated 6/13. That will be item 6A. Also, the addition of the treasurer's report will be 6D4. I believe that will do it.
I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may, Counsel.
Terry, what purchase of property? What's
This
the
is a
address?
tax purchase.
Is it the 1408 Caprice?
It's
No,
it's Hitchcock
this is
Road.
Hitchcock Road.
Okay.
Looks like there is an
I saw the
address.
Caprice one on the
No,
agenda,
the
so I
Caprice
wanted to
is
make sure.
17019.
That's
Got it.
This is something our attorney doesn't even know about.
This is going to turn out well.
Okay, Mr.
I'll make those
Clerk, make that a form.
recommendations, motion to support those recommendations.
Support?
I have motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Okay. This is item 5, public comment. This is for any item that is not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to speak, and you'll need to state your name and your address for the record. You are recognized.
Jerry Harrington, 2240 Wigan Lane, White Lake, President of the Friends of the Library. 10 months ago, we had an election, and it was a close one. It was a real cliffhanger. And then we were dismayed when there was a recount. Oh, I'm sorry. 10 months ago, when we had the election, we were elated with the results. And then we were dismayed when there was a recount. But at the recount, we gained another vote. So we were elated, of course. Since then, people have been asking us, most recently 10 days ago at our library book sale, when's the library going up? And we keep saying, we're waiting for Township Board to get the bond issue going. You people didn't like the results of the election, and I can understand that. But it was a fair election. It was proved by the recount. It's been 9 months, and you've been sitting on it. You lead us in the pledge to the flag every meeting. And you say every vote counts in this country. But you're not abiding by that. I know you have other issues with what your desires and wishes are. That's great. It was a close call. In future issues, bond issues, elections, you have a group of people who are going to be mighty upset with you if you drag your heels and let this go on. And that could swing the election against you folks, individually or as an issue or whatever. So we hope you do your duty. We want to be friends. One board does not usurp the power of the other board. We're co-equals in this. And we want it to be a friendly community that attracts families, expands our tax base, so to promote even more businesses moving here. So please, do your duty. It's been 9 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make comment? Yes, dear, stand and be recognized.
Susan Deal, 9170 Twin Lakes
Whoop,
Drive.
whoop. Susan, you're going to need to go to the microphone.
No one's ever said that to me before.
Thank you.
Okay, Susan Deal, 9170 Twin Lakes Drive, White Lake. At the special meeting or the co-meeting of the library board and the township, The supervisor recommended that the two boards get together and have a meeting to discuss economies of scale or different options and or ideas. And I was wondering if that meeting has occurred.
We'll have a little civic center discussion a little bit later on. This really isn't the format for question and answer, but there will be some conversation regarding that a little bit later. We'll discuss it. Thank you. Anyone else with a comment? Okay, closing public comment. Moving on to item number 6, consent agenda. Mr. Clerk.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the new list of bills
Support.
and the addition of the treasurer's report. Sorry.
Okay.
Support.
We have a support by Mr. Ruggles. Mr. Powell.
Mr. Supervisor, there were, in the community development report, there's a survey, the survey data that was taken online, and I wanted to just point out that it was appeared to be an extremely good and a very, very interesting survey. There are a couple points that I kind of wanted to point out on page 17 of that survey report. It was really fairly telling when it says that 90% of those that participated would like us to develop walkways and hiking paths. Also, 90% would like to see our older parks upgraded. 90% would like hard surfaced of walking trails and biking trails to connect regional trails. And the percentages fell from there. Another very striking issue was one where it asks, and I apologize here, it asks, would you be willing to support with additional taxes? Actually, it doesn't say additional taxes. It says, would you like your township taxes to go to promote additional parkland and pathways? Yes. Would your actions, would you be willing to fund with your White Lake taxes park and rec, more parks and recs? And it was a fairly high percentage. I think 75% of the people said yes. It would have been nice if a little more telling item would have been, would you be willing to raise your taxes in order to do that versus use existing taxes? A number of years ago, Commerce Township put out a very similar request for parklands and parks, and it was like a 90% approval rating on the survey. When Commerce Township went out for an actual millage, it was defeated dramatically. And so there's a huge difference between wants of people and willing to actually increase their taxes in order to do things. But overall, I wanted to point out, and if the residents wanted to see this, I see none of our planning staff is here, but I'm sure that this can be gotten online, and it's an extremely interesting survey of our residents on the various parks activities in the township. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Okay. Now that you totally derailed me, now I gotta figure out where I was.
We just
Mr.
asked for a
Supervisor, if I
motion.
may,
Yeah.
Trustee Voorhees and I also attended that brainstorming meeting, so if anyone has any questions, we're happy to answer too.
All right.
In lieu of planning tonight, yeah.
Back to the consent agenda. We have a motion by Mr. Lilly, approval by Mr. Ruggles. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Item number 7, presentation. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm gonna move this out a little bit. Sergeant Ivory and Officer Claudio, could you guys come up, please? First, I'd like to say we had our open house on Sunday, and it was. First of all, I appreciate everybody that came. It was very nice of you guys to show up and support the police department. We ran out of hot dogs and food like halfway through, and we had to get more. And if we do that, that means a lot of people showed up. So it was a huge success, and I appreciate everybody's support. You guys go ahead and stand over there. On December 12, 2016, Officer DeClaudio was dispatched to the 500 block of Berry Patch Lane for a report of a male subject who had accidentally cut himself on a glass table. The caller called 911 to report the incident after her husband put his hand through the table while putting up decorations. The caller described the injury as profuse, uncontrollable bleeding. Sergeant Ivory heard the radio call and was near the entrance to the subdivision at the time. Officer DeClaudio and Sergeant Ivory responded and pulled up to the residence at the same time. As they were arriving, Sergeant Ivory advised Officer DeClaudio to bring the first aid kit, while he, Sergeant Ivory, entered the residence to evaluate the situation. Upon entering the home, Sergeant Ivory discovered a large amount of blood splatter throughout the residence. He then found the injured party standing over the sink, holding a paper towel to his wrist. The entire bottom of the kitchen sink was filled with blood, and he appeared to be losing color. Officer DeClaudio entered the residence with first aid supplies, as Sergeant Ivory grabbed a towel and held compression on the bleeding wrist, while Officer DeClaudio removed a CAT, which is a combat application tourniquet, which is this right here, and we'll do a demonstration on how it works a little bit later. The two officers then applied the CAT to his arm. Once the tourniquet was applied and tightened, it effectively cut off the blood supply to the arm. Shortly after application of the tourniquet, members of Star EMS and the White Lake Township Fire Department responded to the scene. They advised that the cut was an arterial cut, and it appeared from the amount of blood that the man had lost approximately 1/3 of his blood supply. Star EMS transported him to the hospital, where the doctors removed the tourniquet and confirmed that it was indeed a arterial artery. Doctors were able to clamp the bleeding artery, at which time they gave him 4 pints of blood in a transfusion and stitched the wound. He was discharged from the hospital 2 days later. I'm going to tell you, we got these in our cars. We 2 years ago, I implemented an officer down kits to each car, in addition to the first aid kits. And really, these were made for any officer-involved shootings, or anything that any death experience or near-death experience that the officers had, that they could use this piece of equipment to save one of their partner's life. But in this instance, it saved somebody else's life. If you could go ahead and apply it, that'd be great. They didn't know they were going to do this, so. So in effect, and it's really that simple. He'll start losing feeling in his hand quickly. Right. Yeah. So what it does, he straps it down and lashes it down, and that twisting motion of that pull right there clamps it even further, so there is no circulation to the arm. You can probably take it off now.
Can you do it one more time? Try to get video. Matt, one quick time.
Oh. All right.
So I get video.
I thought you were just joking.
Very good. Good, Larry? All right. So the fire department trains us in using these. We get training every year from the fire department to make sure that every officer and every sergeant is able to use this piece of equipment. And I'll go on. Sergeant Ivory spoke with the caller at a later date and checked on the injured. She confirmed that he was doing well. She stated that doctors advised that the nature of the wound was so bad that they had to bring a vascular surgeon to the ER who clamped the artery because the trip from the ER to the OR would have been too risky. She stated that he is now making a full recovery. Now, due to the quick action of Sergeant Ivory and Officer DeClaudio, the injured was able to get the necessary preliminary treatment required to save his life. For this reason, I am proud to honor Sergeant Ivory and Officer DeClaudio with the White Lake Township Police Department Life Saving Award.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Shake your hands.
Thank you. Way to go. Yeah, we'll be on your back.
Thank you.
Great job. Great job. Just look out for the trip hazard.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. And then we now move on to the minutes. We have the May 22nd, 2017 Special Board of Trustees Joint Library Board Meeting Minutes. Looking for.
Make a motion to approve the May 22nd Special Board of Trustees Joint Library Board meeting minutes.
A motion,
Support?
I have motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. A. May 23rd, 2017, special board minutes of trustees meeting, excuse me, unapproved. We need to get them approved. Do I look for a motion?
Motion to approve the Special Board of Trustees meeting from May 23rd, 2017.
Okay, I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support by Ms. Voorhees. Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Item C, May 23rd, 2017, regular board meetings minutes. Looking for a motion to approve.
I have two changes to make to that.
Yes, sir.
If I could. First on page 8, first paragraph, last line where it says PA. That needs to read PA-188. And then one more change on page 31. Second from last paragraph, second from last line, it says, and some energy. The word energy needs to be changed to synergies. Other than that, I will make a motion to approve as amended.
I have a couple as well, if I could. On page 25, fourth paragraph down, and this is depending on whether you agree, Mr. Supervisor. Supervisor Cole stated that everyone here has put the board in a very, it's written down here as vicarious spot, but I think you mean precarious spot.
Precarious.
So I think that should be
Thank you.
changed. And then also on page 31, under third paragraph down, Trustee Powell stated that he totally loved Bestmore as well. And then the next sentence is very confusing. I really said, I think, her being placed on a memorial plaque should be a shoe-in in my eyes at the new Township Hall. So her being placed on the memorial plaque instead of the memorial plaque, because there isn't one yet.
No. Very good, Mr. Powell. Anyone else care to comment? Any correction? I have motion,
I'll support.
I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, moving on. Item 9A, public hearing with resolution. The public hearing is to confirm the special assessment rule for the SAD, the Castlewood Sewer connections.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Support.
Support. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, is that a roll call? That is a roll call. Public hearing is a roll call.
Public hearing is roll
Keep
call.
forgetting that. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Liz Smith,
Present. Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Paul,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Yes. We are now have an open public hearing to confirm the special assessment role for the SADF Castlewood sewer connections. Anyone care to comment on this at this time? Going once, going twice? Ooh, yes, please. State your name. We'll need to hear.
Patty Leonard, 10570 Estola Avenue. My question is for the SAD, how many houses did agree to hook up for this?
Well, the number of people that agreed to hook up or that have hooked up, and then the number of people that are going into the SAD are two different things.
Okay, how many people agreed to sign up then, to hook up?
In general,
Yes.
I couldn't tell you who paid in cash, but there was 5 that are on this list to be financed.
5?
30-ish altogether?
altogether.
Yeah,
30 houses?
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
ish.
I don't have exact numbers, sorry.
Aaron could get the exact numbers. Thank you, Mr. Potter. Okay. Okay.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Okay, motion to close public hearing.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Just what's the roll call?
We always have to do a roll call in and out. Why was it I thought we could get away with it with doing it out?
We have
Excuse me. Roll call vote.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees.
Yes.
Liz Smith.
Yes.
We are out of public hearing. Mr. Roman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 17-016, which will effectively confirm the tax roll for the Castlewood Sewer Connection Voluntary SAD.
Have a motion?
Support?
Support? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We have established it. Item 9B, hearing for M59 SAD, hearing to establish the district for the contracts 5, 6, and 8. Mr. Clerk?
To make a motion to open public hearing.
Support? Motion and support. Roll call vote. I remember this time.
I know. I'm proud of you.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Kowal,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Liz Smith.
Yes.
At this time, we have opened the public hearing to establish the district for contracts 5, 6, and 8. Is there any comment from the public regarding this matter?
Motion to close public hearing.
I have a motion, looking for support.
I'll support that.
I have support from Ms. Voorhees. Roll call vote.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Kowal,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Andrea Voorhees
Yes.
and Liz Smith.
Yes.
Ayes have it. Okay, yes, Mr. Roman.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 17-021, which will effectively confirm the district for the SAD for water main contracts 5, 6, and 8.
We have a motion, looking for support. Support. I have support from Mr. Ruggles. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. They've been established. Item 10, resolutions. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 17017. Give the Multi-Lake Skaters permission to be recognized as a nonprofit organization to apply to the state for a charitable gaming license.
Very good. Pretty much a boilerplate application for the community event.
Make a motion to approve that resolution
Very good.
17017.
Looking for support.
Support.
Motion and support. Mr. Powell?
I didn't know if there was anyone here representing this item. No? I just had a question as to who their competitors would be. You know, it's hard to play against somebody if there isn't a league. And then I didn't know what percentage they expected their overhead to be versus their actual monies used in the 501c3. And so, but nobody's here to answer it, so.
Only questions they could answer.
Yep.
Okay. A motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Resolution for independent contract agreement for White Lake Lakeside Cemetery. Mr. Lilly.
Mr. Supervisor, we've had a gentleman that's been helping out at our Lakeside Cemetery for at least the last 9 years. Takes a lot of pride in what he does, takes care of the bushes in the ceremonial area, the mulching, he's over there doing watering, takes really good care of the cemetery, and he has mentioned that he'd be really interested in purchasing a grave next to his mother. We've kind of researched all we could possibly do to find a way to compensate Mr. Collier for his services. And this would allow him the opportunity for this year, 2017, to enter into a contract with the township for the amount of $600 to be applied at a later date towards that grave. I think Larry's done a terrific job for us, and
Yes, he has.
this is well deserving for him.
Yep, yes, he has, very much so. Questions from the
I'd
board?
like to make a motion to approve that resolution 17018.
Support?
Support, any questions?
I just, was this, he instigated Terry? Was it like a thanks for your service? How did this come about?
Larry's taken care of the
Yeah.
the cemetery, and him and I were discussing this year. We went over and marked some of the graves that were available in the cemetery. And one of those grave sites that we had identified was next to his mother. He expressed an interest into the possibility of purchasing that. He's done a great job in the 9 years that I've served as clerk, and decided to come back and search out some viable way that we could help Mr. Collier complete his goal. And I think this is
No, I'm absolutely okay. I was just
well
curious.
deserving beyond that point. Larry really does spend a lot of time over there and whatever. So that's, we looked at, just finding some other alternative, but there wasn't any viable way that we could go on the record and say that this is the way we need to do things.
Just out of curiosity, I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm kind of familiar with the cemetery. That's where our family plot is. Where is his mom? General area?
Well, this is the Lakeside Cemetery, not
Well, it
White
says
Lake.
What Lake Cemetery, Township Cemetery. Okay,
This
okay.
is-
No, you're good. Okay, I
That's what it indicated before. This is really the Lakeside Cemetery,
Okay.
the White Lake Lakeside Cemetery.
Yeah, okay. That's
rather
what I
than White
thought.
Lake,
But
so
at
I
the same time, I'm
apologize
like,
for
I
that.
never saw that word. Okay.
That was miscommunication. I apologize for that. The resolution, if you adopt it, should reflect the correct cemetery name on both the resolution and the contract that's attached as Exhibit A.
So noted.
No, you're good. 'Cause that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking that side. He lives on the southern side of the township, so I'm like, why is he? Okay, absolutely fine.
I
Okay.
apologize for that.
All right,
It is what it is.
we have a motion, Mr. Lilly,
Yes, I have a motion.
looking for support.
Supported.
Mr. Support, Mr.
As
Powell?
amended.
As
As
amended?
amended, yes.
As amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We have item 10C, resolution to purchase agreement for sale of 1408 Caprice. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Supervisor, this was a piece of property that we tore down a house on. I think the township had 6,000 some odd dollars invested in the property. We have an offer from the lady next door. This piece of property really isn't conducive to reselling for another residence. However, it could be conducive for a second garage or whatever. She has made us an offer. I noticed in the agreement, and I noticed her today and got a response from that the agreement really isn't necessarily tied to a title search. And she has agreed on her own to pursue the title search and to pay for that. The question that cropped up today, there seemed to be, maybe in some title work, that maybe there's a question about a $99,000 mortgage that has cropped up, and she has a concern about closing on the property, and I fully agree with her if that happened, but I think this is a matter of just filling out doing the research and the title work, and probably that will take care of itself, but that was the only contingency that I seen on here, that she is hesitant of closing immediately until she has obtained the full title work.
Okay, so we'll approve this and close at a little bit of a later date.
I would certainly be sympathetic to her, and I think the board would be if we found out there was a
Absolutely,
$99,000
absolutely.
mortgage
absolutely.
to do that. So.
Okay,
Other than that, she's ready to, she's very interested in the property to attach to her own. She will attach that to her existing property. So
very good. And that will allow us to hopefully recover the expenses at the
that will
township.
cover our township expenses.
Township has money that's laid out for that demolition, okay. Yes, Mr. Powell?
Mr. Supervisor, I don't believe a motion has been made yet, has it?
Not
Right.
really, we're just having a little.
I move resolution number 17-019 to approve the sale of the property located at 1408 Caprice Drive here in White Lake.
Okay. You authorize the supervisor to,
Authorize supervisor to sign the documents when and if it is desired to be consummated by the purchaser.
Sounds good, okay. We have motion, we have support.
Who supported it?
I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. We have motion, now looking for support, okay.
I'll support the motion.
Okay, support the motion, okay. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item 10D, Resolution 17-020, order of dismissal for White Lake versus Monroe. Counselor?
This is that Oak Pond litigation that we've talked about on numerous occasions. The road has been completed, and at this point, it's my understanding the township has no desire to proceed with the litigation. Attached to the resolution is both a stipulated order of dismissal without costs or fees to either party, as well as a notice, a release of the notice of list pendants that we had filed.
You are satisfied, Counselor, with all this activity?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr. Clerk?
Supervisor, I did get a chance to go over to that property. The road really looks nice. They did a nice job.
Took care of
The
their
neighbors are
obligation,
pleased.
finally. Very good, very good.
Quick.
It looks good.
They had until November 15th.
Yeah, that's what I mean, quick.
Got it done
Well, I
ahead of
think
time.
they wanted to release the notice of list pendant so they can start selling.
Cool.
Very good. So we're looking for a motion. Mr. Roman?
Make the motion to approve resolution 17-020. Council, is there anything else I need to do in the motion?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay. I have a motion. Looking for support.
I'll support.
A support from Mr. Lilly. Motion, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, this would be 10E, Resolution 1722, MTA Principles of Governance. Mr. Lilly?
Mr. Supervisor, this is really an FYI that the, resolution. Which one are we on here?
The MTA one.
10E.
10E,
11.
MTA Principles.
Oh, I'm
Principles
sorry.
of
The principles.
governance.
Okay, I had the right page. Every year, we attend the MTA conference. They do a great job for us. We belong to the organization, provide a lot of information, training. A lot of knowledge can be gained. This was emailed over to us asking if the board would adopt these principles of governance and ask that the township board sign and hang on the wall to enforce their rules and principles that pledge to our township or state and to the county.
Very good. As we know, the MTA is a very fine organization and is very educational for every one of us here, and has always proved to be enlightening and always proved to show us that we do a pretty good job here as a whole, as a township, so as we look across the state. So I'll
Make
take
a
that,
motion.
take that in the form of a motion. All right.
Approve the White Lake Charter Township Principles of Governance through the MTA Association to be signed and hung on the wall.
Okay, a motion,
I'll support that.
I have support by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Do we need to sign it? Is there
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, do we sign it
We'll
later?
get the
We'll just
original.
sign one copy, pass it around.
Yeah.
Someone's got a clean copy.
Okay, on to item 11, new business. We have a request by property owners to rectify a billing error in contract 6.
That's where that thing comes in.
Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Supervisor, after we had went through contracts 5, 6, and 8, and spent a lot of time, this board did, giving people the option to either pay their obligations in cash or to pay over a 10-year period, as was indicated earlier in the meeting. These are two property owners that the calculations had been made erroneously by former administration. This will rectify those errors that have been made and will impose no further obligation upon either of the two listed parcels. The LaBreach property, parcel 1221-252-012, and the Lavasser property identified as 1222-151-002. This will complete their obligations with White Lake Township.
Very
And
good.
both of them have asked for some type of letter from the board indicating that the board had done that, and if they do receive further notices, there will be sufficient information given to Aaron for the file, that in case this ever crops up again, that they will both be noticed that they have no further obligations as far as water.
And again, this is part of that 5, 6, and 8, which was kind of this dangling participle that we were able to clear up and has been very successful at, and it's nice to get that off our, kind of off our radar, so to speak. So, very good. Is that in the form of a motion?
I will put that in the form of a motion.
Need support?
Support?
Support by Mr. Roman, or motion and support, all in favor? Aye. Metro ACT permit. Counselor?
So, most of the board members here today are familiar with the Metro Act, and the Metro Act authorizes telecommunication providers to utilize the township's public rights-of-ways for their public facilities. The Metro Act has a lot of rules that are triggered upon receipt of an application, and one of those rules is a township board has to approve or deny within 45 days. Since the township board only meets once a month, we had to get this on the agenda, and there was some issue with getting it to me sooner. So, long story short, end of the year last year, the township received correspondence from Oakland County Road Commission asking us to allow them to review these permit applications before we actually approve them, because townships, don't own the roads, and a lot of this is also must be approved by the Road Commission. Because of the late, I received the information late. By the time I got it to the county, they have not approved it at this point. I did add language in the resolution that requires approval by the Oakland County Road Commission and all state, county, and local agencies. I would simply ask that if you were to approve this resolution today, you would add in one of these paragraphs, maybe paragraph 5, where you authorize the supervisor to execute. You add language upon final review and approval by the township attorney, in light of the fact that we've not heard back from the county. Just so that you know, this is a new provider. It's MCI Metro Access Transmission Service. Their DBA is Verizon, and their permit application, it shows about 50,000 lineal feet in the township.
A little bit of wire.
It's a lot. It's not just aerial, but underground, because they're doing a lot of fiber. What we haven't gotten clear from them are their route maps, which I'd like to clarify, which is why I want that contingency to review it. How much is aerial and how much is fiber underground?
Any other questions by the board?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 17023, subject to the final review by the township attorney and authorization of the supervisor to sign when completed.
Motion, looking for support?
Support.
And support. Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 11C, grinder station purchase for stock. Mr. Potter.
Yes. So I'm sure most of you are aware the sewer department has been installing anywhere between 2 to 5 grinder stations a week since the weather finally broke and the summer building season is on us. So we're down to approximately 8 grinder stations of the most common size, 24 by 72 inch with a 50-foot direct burial cable. So what we would like to do is purchase 10 additional units for stock so that we can keep our wonderful builders building without requiring them to wait 6 weeks that it takes to get these stations delivered. I'd also like to ask the Township Board to grant the supervisor, or possibly create a committee of the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer to approve these purchases, at least during the building months. Because of the fact that we only meet once a month and the long lag time on the ordering of these stations, we'd like to keep these builders jamming as much as possible. And I think that if we could speed up the process of ordering these, that it would be helpful for them.
Okay, very good. And these are just standard grinder pumps that we've been using as a standard issued item that meets the county requirements.
Yes, these are the most common sizes. We do have quite a few different sizes in inventory, different designs, but that's the most common one that fits probably roughly 75% of the applications out there.
Pardon?
That's not for you.
Okay, Mr. Powell.
I wondered if I could ask.
Sure, please do.
Aaron, it's my experience that there is a full truckload discounted price if we got a truckload, 40 units, something like that. And didn't know if there was a reason why you weren't recommending maybe a truckload purchase.
Well, the cost, I did get a quote from them, and it looked like the quantity on their quote was, actually I didn't add that to the package.
No.
I did get pricing on that. That pricing was good, I believe up to 20 units. So I would have to call them, find out some additional pricing on more stations. The problem that we run into is that we don't have, we're storing these at Jet Pump's supply yard. They have a limited space, and we have a very hard time keeping track of the inventory because it's off-site. So our installers go, we authorize the station to be released by Jet to our installers. They go there to pick them up. In the past, maybe my predecessor didn't keep very good records on where those stations went, so there's a discrepancy in the inventory that we've been working on for months. And so until we really find a place where we can store these stations with access for our installers to get their equipment in there to load these things up, and we can get trucks in there to deliver them to us, it's not, it's beneficial for the cost purposes only. Everything else, we end up spending a lot of hours trying to keep track of them.
Okay, and certainly I'm aware of the coordination problems with Jet Pump as well. They have a pretty big yard, and I didn't know if we could build a fence in for ours if we had a full truckload. You might want to talk to them at Jet Pump. My other question is that is this the Ecotran basin, or is this the fiberglass basin that we're still using?
This is the fiberglass.
Okay. Is there a reason you haven't upgraded or haven't gone to the new style?
We
basin?
use the Ecotrans in quite a few places.
Okay.
One thing about these stations that they tend to work better in wet applications. The Ecotrans station actually needs to be assembled,
Right.
essentially in the ground. So in the areas around town where we're in the lakefront properties,
Okay.
C&E prefers to use these stations because he can assemble them on top.
And set them down in the hole.
You know, he'll pre-pour the ballast, and then he'll set the entire station down in the hole so that it minimizes his time in the wet, cave-in environment.
Okay, and then I wanted to compliment you on in ordering the OGP pumps. Those are incredible pumps, so thank you for doing that for the township. Okay, thank you.
So are you looking to approve these 20, or would you like to have a motion proposed that would allow the in-house officials to order these as required?
I'd prefer the latter.
Okay.
And this was an order for 10.
Yeah, this is just 10. Yeah.
Correct. And I know what's happening here because we're
Yeah.
getting busy and we fall in that cycle. And,
Exactly.
and the supply chain hasn't quite caught up with the demand because,
Well, we're covered now, but like I say, our builders are in high gear right now, and so we're starting to burn through a lot of these stations very quickly.
okay.
Question, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, Mr. Ruggles.
If storage is the issue, wonder if there'd be potential to prepay at a discounted rate and then take delivery at a later date, pay for the truckload, take 10 as you need it, another 10, another 10, another 10. So maybe you want to talk to Jet Pump about that.
Can do that.
Then we wouldn't have to, give the supervisor permission to make those calls. We can make the call and take delivery as you need it.
Okay.
Specific request tonight is for Tim?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to purchase 10 additional grinders and also authorize up to 30,000 additional money to be taken from improvement revolving and put into the sewer grinder fund.
Very good. You take that as a motion, I take it?
As a motion.
Looking
I'll
for
support that.
Support, we have motion, we have support, all in favor?
Aye.
Order the pumps.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, sir.
Because I don't think it was included in the last motion. Would it be in order to make another motion to allow the supervisor to approve the purchase of additional simplex pump stations at 5 at a time?
I would not have a problem doing that. I wouldn't have a problem if it was left to the in-house officials to make that decision, so we could communicate that need. Then we would all know, what it is that we need at that time.
But you're the ultimate person that, maybe you're not the ultimate person to actually sign the purchase agreement.
I may be the ultimate person, but I just want to make sure the communication is open. Everybody knows what's going on. So, because it would indeed may require us going back to the fund, temporarily pull money out.
I don't have any problem with Rick signing the purchase of additional as long as we have sufficient funds in the account.
Right. So are you looking to make a
I'm
motion?
looking to make a motion to allow the supervisor to purchase up to 5 stations at a time with recommendation from the in-house staff.
Support. I have motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. That'll kind of free up the ice dam a little bit, I hope, and then we can discuss some further plans a little bit further down the line.
Please
Thank
check
you.
into that truckload
Yeah.
option.
I think our biggest problem is the storage.
Yeah, one of these days we may not have that problem.
Maybe not, but right now we do. Item 11D is sort of like an FYI, and I thought came to my attention that there is we're going to be going through a change in our refuse carrier, and one of the things that came to light was there is a company that's called Recycle Coach, and Recycle Coach is a company that's out of Toronto, Ontario. And what they are part of the new age of communication and technology. And what they would do is they would develop a application for us that would be a tool to allow residents to link from the township website and have access to pickup schedules. So they would know what weeks they're going to have their pickup. And in particular, where this is most important is when we have holidays. So if there's any changes or anything may necessitate a change in the schedule, that the carrier will be able to apply this information to this website schedule. It just looks like a regular calendar, and make people aware that okay, this is this is the 4th of July. Where's it going? What day is it actually going to happen? Are we going to have it everything will come in on such and such a day, or how will it all work out? So it makes people aware of when their pickup could be within the community and if there's any changes. It also allows residents to notify the township hauler when special pickups are needed, like a mattress or a bulk item of sort. They can literally do it just right online, and they don't have to call the haul or the carrier. And this way there's actually an electronic paper trail, so to speak, that request was made to come and take that mattress or that refrigerator or that couch that I've seen so many of in White Lake Township recently, those type items. Would also allow township residents to see when we have events planned, like our household hazardous waste program and or a shredding program that we are sort of looking into out of the corner of our eye, things of these nature that would allow people to have a better understanding as to when it's going to take place. They don't have to worry about calling. They can literally at 10 o'clock at night, if they just cruise on the website and pull it up, bang, they can see everything that's going on that pertains to them. There's a lot of other items that this company offers. I just wanted to call it to the board's attention. It's called recyclecoach.com, and this is actually a free service to the township. Now there's always a catch to everything. Okay. And the catch is that they have 2 levels. They have a free service level and they have a pay level. Pay level is probably we're not quite ready for it yet, but what's unique in that in their scheduling is that, say for example, a tree fell down on Elizabeth Lake Road. Someone could literally get on the computer, notify the township through the computer that a tree has fallen on Elizabeth Lake Road or onto a fence, or that there's another issue, a chuck hole, or these types of issues. They could notify, and it would all go into our eventually to our DPW/maintenance, and almost really generate a work order or at least a notification, so that there's actual, again, that electronic paper trail to follow. So what I would ask is that if all the board members have an opportunity, take a look at it. I can arrange for a demonstration. There is no commitment at this point. I've made no commitment at this point. It's strictly just an FYI. And there may be another tool in the box out there like this, but I just thought it was kind of neat that it's just something that we could offer our residents, and the key word is for free, and that might make things just a little bit easier. So that was it. That's all that was just a FYI.
So like this, could someone like myself get on that website? Because I've actually called Republic Services for a resident that their couch sat there for 6 months. Like, I haven't been able to get through, so I literally made the phone call for them, and the next day it was picked up. Could I do that for the neighbor?
You could, it's really, if you needed to help someone, and once you got on that site, I don't know, have all of the particulars for it. We have to go through a full demonstration of it, but it's a very diverse type of application. It looks like it can be used in a lot of different ways.
So I could request it. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Okay. Okay, moving along to item E. We're just going to have a brief civic center discussion. Tonight's discussion, what I would like to do is just give all of the trustees a few moments to have a little conversation. But essentially what direction I've decided to take this in is that I've decided to set up a civic center advisory committee, and made up of a group to look at the needs of the community in a civic center campus setting. So members will consist of the following. We'll have a representative of the police department, most likely the chief, the fire department, most likely the chief, 2 members of the library board, 2 members of the township board, 1 member of the senior center, 1 of our planning personnel, and then an outside planning consultant. Okay. The purpose of this particular group is to assess the needs and the services of this community and provide collaborative information as to the future needs and services in a civic center campus-like setting. So as we move forward, we'll use this information to try to give the best services to the community at the most economical means of doing so. So everything will be looked at from soup to nuts. And that's what I would like to start off and see what input we might have on a couple things, or your concerns that you might have towards this particular committee and some of the discussion or ideas that you may have. So I'd like to just kind of put it out there. And Andrea, would you like to comment on anything?
Come back to me, please.
Mr. Supervisor, before we start our township discussion, may I read a statement that I received from the library board?
Certainly.
I received this statement from the library board president, Glenn Roscoe, and I was asked to read it into our record as library liaison this evening. Supervisor Kowal and all township trustees, when the library requested to be put on the agenda, it was based on our understanding the June meeting was to be held on the 20th. Due to the acceleration of our meeting schedule, we are not able to have facts to share, and we would rather speak with factual data or opinions based on factual data rather than what we think. Based on this, we request you remove the library's proposed discussion from your agenda, but in its place, we formally request the trustees to take the required action to have the voter-approved sale of the bonds take place as soon as possible to meet the timing that was presumed in the ballot. In the meeting held on Thursday, June 8, 2017, with Supervisor Kowal, Trustee Smith, Trustee Powell, Jason from the Planning Department, Assistant Director Denise Stefanik, Library Treasurer Joe Fennell, and Library President Glenn Roscoe, myself, he means myself, we agreed to establish a committee to work together on the site plan of the 2 individual sites to reduce the infrastructure cost as much as possible by working together with the township. This committee was not to focus on a shared building, but rather a site plan. Mr. Supervisor was going to send me 2 names to represent the township and hire an outside consulting firm to support this team. Once we get the names, we will schedule a meeting as soon as possible. We did not discuss the timeline for this group, but I would expect them to be supportive of the timeline provided to the township on May 2nd. Again, our apologies for not being able to attend this evening. Sincerely, Glenn Roscoe from the Library Board President on behalf of the Library Board.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Okay. Andrea, did you want to
No,
continue on?
I'm good for now.
Okay.
I might come back. though.
Mr. Powell?
Wow. I have had the privilege in the past to represent half dozen communities in Oakland County over the past years of my professional life. I was the civil engineer that did the layout for the Waterford Township Hall and that center. I was also the engineer that did the layout for the City of Novi Hall. I was instrumental in the building program, or the building that the Commerce Township is currently in. And I am very concerned that this township not jump too quickly on the use of the new township property that we have secured. Most communities wish they could be in the position that White Lake Township is right now. The township itself purchased 25 acres. The library board purchased 9 acres plus or minus. And the way I look at that is township residence properties, not township board property and not library board property. It's township residence property. And this is our one and only chance. And all the communities I've represented would dream about having this chance. And that's having a blank piece of paper to go in without any preconceived ideas and lay out what would be a township campus of different uses, including maybe park area, senior center, township board, library, Parks and Rec, police, fire, to have a campus, not only for the most efficient layout, but also for the best cost, the most efficient cost. And it would be extremely irresponsible of this board, I believe, if we did not go into this with the ability to having experts help us lay that site out for the most efficient way to save the people of White Lake Township the most money we possibly can. I'm very discouraged when the library board says, we're willing to talk as long as you do it this, this, and end up with this conclusion. And that really discourages me. It also discourages me when the library board says that they're asking us to act in the timing that they presumed in the ballot language. And in the ballot language, it doesn't tell timing. It doesn't say piece of property. It doesn't say sole use building. It doesn't say any of that. It just says for the use of library purposes. I am absolutely in total support of this township having a new library. I think it's long overdue, and I believe I'm in full support of this township having a new township hall. I think that's long overdue. I in no way am in favor of proceeding at a fast pace just to accomplish somebody's end goal without knowing that that's the best use of our property. And so I'm in full favor of the committee that you're suggesting, and I think that committee needs to keep this board and the library board in total inform these two boards so that we can proceed. I don't think that there's a major issue if in fact this is delayed, and it would be a shame to act irresponsibly and do something too quickly without doing the very best we can for the people in White Lake Township. So I'm in full favor of this committee and look forward to hearing reports back from the committee at regular intervals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Mr. Lilly.
Just for the record, Mr. Supervisor, I did not come tonight to be prepared to discuss the library situation. I did come to listen to what you have to say. I fully agree with your concept. I'm going to support your concept. I think there is a lot to be learned. I know you've been pressured about where is all the money savings and whatever. I think time will tell what the money savings are and where they're at. I think a lot has to do with the mere convenience of the citizens of this community. And that was expressed at a previous meeting that, well, they can be separate, but there's a lot to the fact that we're going to be supporting not only the library representatives, but our senior centers, our senior citizens as well, and other people of the community that are not really that involved to have the opportunity to come to a complex to do all of their business at one time. So I apologize for not being fully prepared, and at the appropriate time I will. But I will, in the meantime, support your concept to look at all of those potential savings, inconveniences, conveniences, make sure that all our consultants, this isn't just building a building. This has a lot to do with the Elizabeth Lake corridor and how it's developed. So I think there's many aspects of that, the curb cuts that are going to happen on Elizabeth Lake Road, central entranceways. We don't need 6 driveways to accommodate police, fire, and library in Township Hall. I think all of those things are entering into what you have described, I think, well, to the board members, that you want to bring all of those people together. So we're not just talking about buildings, we're talking about the 50-year future of White Lake Township. And I, like I say, again, going to say, I support everything that you've said. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, Mr. Powell was very well spoken. I agree spot on with everything you said. I think, like I said before, the library board, we have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility, and we need to do our homework. We need to slow down, and we need to figure this out. Just like Terry talked about, it's more than just one building. And putting together a master plan isn't just build the building and deal around it. It's to put together a vision for what we want as a community. And Mr. Supervisor here has done a lot of work, and I agree with the committee. I look forward to it. And I'm excited. I mean, this is exciting stuff, and I hope everybody gets on board and is open-minded and is willing to do what's best for the citizens of this township, more so than just what a small group perceives as the end game. We need to look at what is best for every resident. What's going to benefit them? Cost savings, cost sharing, reduction in services. What's wise for everyone, rather than just speaking as in presumed language in the ballot. I'm pretty sure that we approved the language in the ballot, and I don't remember presuming a whole lot more than what was in it, especially no time frame. So that's my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. Ms. Smith, I know you read a statement, but I'm sure you'd like to add
Sure,
something.
the statement, I was just asked to read it again on behalf of the library board. So to honor the library board's request and their wishes this evening, we will speak to them at a later date, and I look forward to that conversation. It is important to me to mention that this board does have a fiduciary responsibility, and I take that very seriously. So I look forward to speaking to the library board when they're prepared. The future of White Lake is very exciting, and we do have a chance here to do many things. So I too am in favor of the committee. It's always important to talk and to open those lines of communication. So I look forward to that committee. I support that idea. I believe the library board does as well. They said so in their statement. I think that's about it. I mean, we've been in previous meetings this week with the library board, so I don't have much new to say, but you know, we have a lot to accomplish here and to work for, and it's very exciting. The future of White Lake is, we need to take it very seriously. So,
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms. Smith.
Supervisor.
Ms. Voorhees, coming
No,
back
I'm
around?
still good, because I agree. I love the fact that you set up a committee of all these people, so. The only thing I don't thought differently is maybe an outside, non-police department, non-fire, just average Joe citizen on the board. It's a completely,
Yeah, this is more of the mechanical functions that,
Okay.
as it directs to those particular people. The only people that are gonna tell us how the fire department needs to operate is someone from the fire
no,
department.
absolutely, but yeah.
Police
Yeah,
department.
absolutely.
And library and township hall. Citizens will have input in this process as it goes along, but this is more for the mechanics
Okay,
of it.
okay, that's fine.
The nuts and bolts. You know, how it's going to be landscaped and how it'll be detailed will be all to be determined. And this is just now setting off on this road of discovery that we have, of which we haven't had this opportunity
Absolutely.
before. In theory, we had this opportunity many years ago for some vision that Mr. Lilly shared with the group. And now that is now coming to fruition. The main thing is that we've procured the property, and it's actually 26.02 acres, I believe, with an easement down to Brundle Lake, so that you know, people can maybe go down there and enjoy the natural area eventually, and be part of a path and trail system that so many people over the years in this community have expressed an interest and a desire for. So that's very important in the parks. Thank you, Andrea.
No problem.
Okay. Well, what I would like to,
Look at-
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
One last comment, if I could.
Certainly.
I kind of sensed in the last meeting that we had with the library that there was something more to this July timeline than maybe what meets the eye. And I think everything's on the table, at least between the township board and the library board, that if for some reason, if this is a monetary issue, if there is an urgency or whatever, that urgency be discussed. Because I think certainly this township board is in the position that we can be a helpful tool if that's one of the issues that need to be done. And I say all of the issues should be put on the table. They're not insurmountable.
Correct.
And I think we have the opportunities to take care of those things if necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly.
I'm assuming that you would have to pass a bond, wouldn't you? To construct the township hall?
It'll all be determined on when the costs come out, what the cost would be, and we do an actual cost study of which we're going to have that be part of this committee will be done. Excuse me, you need to stand to be recognized, sir. I don't know who you are, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Anyways, the Civic Center Advisory Committee will, look in depth on the form and function of these facilities in the most economic way that they can develop these areas so that we get the best bang for our buck. Longevity is very important. This building has been here since the 30s. It's been a township hall since the early 1960 or 1961. So this is obviously a decision that we're not going to take lightly. We're going to have a long-term commitment financially, and it needs to service the community into the future. So that being said, we will continue to move forward with this, and as we have some more information to relay to the public, and eventually we'll have some public input meetings. I would like to also have at some point a town hall meeting regarding this matter, once we have a little more information along the way and a little more vision in place. So that would be very important. I notice a few of the hands have gone up in the crowd, and I'd like to address those questions if I can. Yes, sir. Your name?
My name's Dennis Ames, and I live at 9095 Satellite. And I'd like to address first a couple of things that Mr. Powell said. My understanding is that at Waterford, the library building preceded the construction of the township hall itself. So it was the library that led the way there. In terms of Commerce Township, the library is separate from the township offices. And the same is true at the Novi Library. So I'm not sure I understand the tie-in there. The issue is that the library board has earned a millage, okay, has had it approved by the voters. It is in the process of designing a building. There are obviously funds needed. And it seems to me it's your ministerial obligation to allow the library board to access those funds. Indeed, I think that you need a new building. I will vote for it. But I don't think that you need to hold up the library when, if you don't have the funds, is the library supposed to wait until when? Till forever? Or do you have the funds currently to build a new township hall? I think that there is a responsibility that you have to allow the library board to access the funds that the voters approve. Remember, it's not your money or my money, or for that matter the library's board's money. It is the people's money, and they designated it for a library. They didn't designate it for a civic center. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Roman, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, thanks, Mr. Supervisor.
Sorry about that.
I also didn't come with a prepared statement, but and I did miss the meeting that you and Mr. Powell went to the other day.
And myself.
And I talked a little bit to Jason about that meeting, so I do have some thoughts. The ballot language did not mention any timing, so I was never aware of any timing. It's my understanding that the library board is really does not want to bend on the fact that they want their own building, and for the life of me, I can't understand that.
Know nothing about libraries.
Excuse me.
How do you promote togetherness? How do you bring your community together when you've got a separate building?
Got a separate building
Okay.
in our back.
What if our water department wanted a separate building? Our clerk's department wanted a separate building. Our senior center wanted a separate building. Okay? A separate building is going to come at a huge cost to our taxpayers. It absolutely will.
And he approved it.
Call to order. Mr. Roman is speaking. Please let him speak. Mr. Roman?
I've asked the library board what their urgency is, and the only answer that I've ever gotten was that they made promises to library patrons. Now I'm hearing that they're going to run out of operating funds in September. Very different issue. Why that wasn't brought up way back, I don't know. But as Mr. Lilly said, I would hope our board would be willing to help out the library so that they don't run out of operating funds. And finally, Mr. Supervisor, I fully support your idea for this Civic Center Committee.
Thank you.
So thanks for bringing it up.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, if I could say just one additional thing.
Yes, Mr.
And
Powell.
just think about this. I would hope anyway that this committee might have regular sessions, published sessions, and that the public could certainly come and attend, maybe not participate, but certainly come and attend, and maybe even have some time for public comment as well. I think that would be important.
Very good. Yeah, we'll all be taken into consideration. It'll take a little time to assemble and organize, and once
Yes.
we reach that point, then we'll go from there.
Mr. Supervisor, I just wanted to add
Yes,
one
Ms.
thing to
Smith.
note. If anyone hasn't had a chance to look yet, just on the Civic Center topic, there is a map now hanging up here. Or if the public watching would like to come in and familiarize themselves with the property, it's right here on the wall across from me.
Thank you. Yes.
Two quick questions.
You stand up, please, and kind of project.
Two quick questions. The first is that you mentioned that the township purchased 25 acres and the library did 9. In this civic center concept, are you considering using all 34, or can the civic center concept be just on the 25?
Regardless of what the ultimate outcome is, the day that the property was purchased, the adjacent property, the 25 plus acres was purchased, and essentially all property lines disappeared between the library and the township, because it's all owned by the township people.
That's what I was asking.
Okay.
So then the
Last I checked on your tax bill, that would tell you that.
So that
Okay.
segues into my next question, which is, keep getting confused because it does seem like there's a we-they thing, and I own my own money, I own my own building, I own everything, and I get the concept that I live in White Lake, so if I'm paying taxes, then it belongs to all of us. But the property back here, that's a separate building, the township owns that, right?
Correct.
I mean, trying to phrase this right. The trustees own that, not the library board.
The township residents
Okay, so if
own
the,
that building.
so the new building is built with the library bond.
Correct.
Who owns that?
The township residents.
Okay, but there's just a different governance board.
It's a different funding mechanism, fiduciary mechanism, and that's what really separates the two more than anything else.
So your funds can commingle or cannot commingle?
Well, they commingle here right now.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, if
Yeah.
they're in.
So that precedent has been set. Mr.
I think you need to be clearer of the question, because I think some people think that we're gonna take the library, what
No,
was
that's
voted
not
for
the
the
intention,
library money and commingle that. I just wanna make it clear to them, I think we understand that we're gonna use library-approved money for some other purposes, and that is absolutely not going to be true.
The only definition of this would be is that depending on how the ultimate physical compilation of this is, if two ways, if it is building A and building B, well, they're gonna probably have a common driveway at some point. They're probably gonna have some other common matters at that point, much like we do here. So you do a pro rata share as to who's responsible for what, okay? And that makes a savings. If they're both in the same facility, then it's the same type of thing. It's just like a condominium act. You have X number of square feet, you're responsible for X number of dollars in maintenance, and that type of, configuration. And that is what is ultimately being looked at. What's the most economic way to do it and the most practical way to do it? Not for the township board, not for the township library, for the township residents, for my kids and my grandkids and the people down the line. What's the best way to do it?
And in the end, it's still all owned by the township.
Ultimately, it's all owned by the taxpayer of White Lake Township, correct. It's just how the taxpayer wants to spend their money. Do we want and need a new library? Absolutely. Okay, am I in favor of a new library? Absolutely. I've been a supporter, my family's been a supporter of the library financially for years. My mother was an avid bookworm, and if she knew that I wouldn't support a library, she'd be haunting me to no end, okay? But I haven't heard her coming around my subconscious here lately telling me I'm heading in the wrong direction. So what I want to do is just make sure that what is done is the right move. The library, all the supporters, all the library board and all the supporters need to be applauded for their efforts. Their efforts were a catalyst to move this township forward. It's just that now it's all about timing. Now we're talking about the only thing that's done is paper, okay? There's no cement in the ground, there's no driveway cuts, there's no sewer line in, there's no water line in, there's nothing other than paper. Day after day after day in the business world, there are lots of dollars that are spent, and then once another idea has come to fruition that it's possibly a better direction to go, that first idea may be not have been the best choice. At the time, it may have been the best choice, but when the dynamics change, that's when you have to look at the entire process.
I'm just curious on where I get the sense of my money and your money kind of thing. I feel that undercurrent, so I'm just trying in my head to figure out how that's bubbling up, where it's coming from, and get an understanding.
They are
of
an
how it's-
autonomous board, so they do manage their own budget. The library board is an autonomous board.
Okay, excuse me, Mr. Sheldon.
My name is Sheldon Greenblatt. I live at 9055 Huron Bluffs Drive. I'm curious, how many of you were at the joint meeting between the library board and the township? Show of hands.
You mean last week?
This would have been on May 22nd.
Okay, how many were there?
Watched it online.
Okay, how many of you watched it online? Okay. You really have to see that meeting to understand where everything is coming from. I personally believe that there should be a separate library, personally. But when I looked at it, I said to myself, okay, I'm a taxpayer here. A separate library would be great, but we didn't need a separate township hall. That money's gonna add to the tax bill. The next thing I did was I went to a meeting that was not recorded, that was put on by the library board. A couple of the, you were there. Liz was at that meeting. At that meeting, the library board, their architects and designers presented a program that was very interesting. They put up a beautiful building, they showed how they were doing it. It was a concept, it wasn't the final design, it was still things that had to be done. 30,000 square foot building, okay? We have an $8.5 million potential bond out there. I asked a very important question, because this was a one-story building they wanted to build. How much would it cost to use that same footprint, the exact same footprint, and have a second story that could be accessed from another, from not necessarily the library section of the building? 10% increase in costs. You could turn literally a 30,000 square foot building into a 60,000 square foot building for approximately a 10% cost in the infrastructure, because you gotta make it strong enough to support the various weight. And then you put the other costs for the administrative offices on top of that. As a practical matter, as a taxpayer, not as a library patron, I love the library. In fact, when I found out that the library in Alexandria burned, I cried. And that happened 2,000 years ago. So the point is, we need a library, we need new administrative offices, and what really became obvious at the joint meeting that was on tape was that we had two separate trustee boards that for 5 years never talked to each other. Now that doesn't make sense. Now they're willing to talk to each other. Now there is a plan in place, there is a potential footprint. The township is ready to come forward with what they're able to do, and maybe everybody can get what they want. It might be in one box, but the levels could be separate. There's no reason why the administrative offices would have to mix in with the library offices, when you could have separate entrances, or however you wanted to build it. I think Mike Powell, he knows how to build those things. A question was, information was, well, why would one community have a combined library and offices, and another have separate library and separate offices? Well, that has to do with the way it's set up. Some of those communities were set up in such a fashion that the library was actually part of the administration of the township. Ours isn't like that. We have two separate bureaucracies here, which is fine, you work. But there's no reason that they can't use a same physical structure if each one gets what they want. Just pancake it. It can be set up as a potential co-op. I believe Rick Coal mentioned that, a co-op or a condominium, or however
type.
you want to do it. They can still be separate. The point is that if the two boards can cooperate, the library structure can be started in such a way that when the township is ready to, when the township trustees are ready to build their portion, it can be put right on top without interfering with anything. And that's an option. But to get there, the two sides have to start talking together. And once they start doing that, and once they present it to you, that's fine. But like I said, you know, I'd rather see a separate building, but you have to look at the numbers. You have to look at how much is this building gonna cost the taxpayers? Because you could end up in a situation where nobody gets any money, because the taxpayers are gonna look at it, the bond passed by such a narrow margin, but it passed. And it passed, that's true, but you don't get the money. The point is, they hold the money. They have the purse strings. Doesn't it make sense to see if something can be smoothed over so that it makes them, give them more incentive to move forward quicker than otherwise? But, you know, that's only my opinion. And I think what has to happen is the two boards really have to talk to each other. There has to be a better plan. The library has done a wonderful job of coming up with what they want. There's no doubt, they are 5 years ahead of the board. Okay, no doubt about that. But that's because one hand wasn't talking to the other. That's my perspective of what's been going on. And I've been watching what's been going on around here for a while now. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Roger Harrington, 2240 Wigan Lane. My wife and I built a home and grew up in West Bloomfield. Okay. West Bloomfield acquired a big piece of property, and they built separate facilities. In other words, the library had their needs, the police department had their needs, the township hall had their needs. Okay. I don't think there's been a library that's built in the last 40 years that's been combined with the township hall.
We have a next door neighbor that did that. Springfield Township. Modern. And at that meeting, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I read 5 or 6 other cities that were relatively easy to find that have combined facilities that are relatively fresh, and it is a national trend, not only for libraries and city halls to combine, but it's also a national trend for fire and police to combine in public safety buildings. So there are a lot of different changes that are going on for scales of economy.
Because I believe in the master plan. I don't think there's any question about a master plan being the way to go in terms of entrances and how the facilities are going to be handled. I don't see why there's an objection to the library having a freestanding building. Whether you want to build a township hall that has a police department and a fire department as part of it, it's fine. But obviously, as he said, the library went out and acquired the property and worked real hard to pass a vote. The township suddenly wakes up and says, "Gee, that sounds like a good idea. Why don't we go out and buy some adjacent property and maybe we can create a community complex?" I agree with the idea of the community complex, but I wonder where the township has been for the last many years in terms of this idea.
I wasn't in office.
Yeah, but you had some relatives that were in office.
Not since
Thank
its
you.
conception. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Stan.
I still live at 9095.
Didn't change.
No. I've been there for 43 years, actually. I think that maybe the township board members don't appreciate the urgency that those who support the library feel. Let me give you an example. For every large print book that's purchased, they have to discard one because there's no shelf space. And that is common. So the supporters of the library see these meetings and they drag on for, if you put a date on that these meetings will conclude September 1, that'd give people some sense of closure. But certainly you must know that meetings can go on ad infinitum, or at least past 11 o'clock.
Absolutely.
Which approaches ad infinitum for you, I'm sure. So there is an urgency, and I ask you to appreciate that sense that and there is pressure in the community. I go get a haircut. My barber asks me, when are they going to start that library? I tell him, well, they've done this and this, and now we're waiting for the bonds to be issued, which is a fair statement, right? We're waiting for the bonds to be issued. So if you could see that need, and a 30,000 square foot library for a community this size, that's just barely what's required by library standards. That's not a large library at all. And the longer you wait, the more construction costs are going to be. There isn't much inflation now, but there is inflation, right? It's deflating those dollars, and it is something that you have to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Lilly.
I'd like to bring up a point, and really you haven't touched on it yet, and will be touched on, the point of where are we going to go from here in order to convince the citizens of White Lake Township to get a bond to build a new township hall. That's going to be a question that we're going to face after our due diligence. But I think nobody's taken into consideration in the meantime when we're asking the taxpayers of this community to provide financing for a new township hall, and thinking about our plan, that our plan is to move the fire department down to the new property. That gives us the ability to sell the property that the fire department's on. And the same is true with this complex, with the library just picking up and leaving. Now, we have a building that's sitting vacant. And in order for us to accomplish our goal, we have to show the citizens that we're not just gonna go out and ask for $8.5 million, that we may ask for 8.5, but we're going to find a way to recoup 2 or 3 million or 4 million of that by selling the properties that we have. We cannot sell this piece of property and keep the fire department here. We cannot sell this property keeping the library here. And we cannot sell the property with the township hall here. So in your plan, and I know that that's part of the discussion from the township end, is how can we economically prove to our residents, as far as the whole plan, that this is what we need to do in order to recoup money. We could just go out and ask for $20 million, probably not gonna get it. But I'm sure with all the resources that you've talked about, and the resources that we have not talked about, that we're gonna find a way to put a bunch of money in there that we've been able to accumulate over time, a substantial amount of money to offset the obligation of the township to not only just building the building, but in order to maintain it for the next 50 years. So I think when you're asking the library to consider, that we're being asked to consider the library, I think the library ought to consider our position. They're the ones picking up and leaving us a vacant building over here that the taxpayers of this township pay for. So I just, again, concur, not prepared tonight, but concur with your recommendations that this thing is going to expand into a lot of things that people haven't thought about, and I applaud you for that. So.
Well, the purpose of tonight's meeting was primarily to, start some dialogue. And, the point was, your point's very well made. I was really kind of taken back when I'd asked, when was the last time there was a joint township board, library board meeting? And all I got was blank stares. No one knows. No one can tell me. No one can cite it ever happening on a specific date. So that's why I felt it was high time, it was overdue for at least both boards to sit down and talk to each other. Find out what's going on, what's on each other's, what it is that they want to accomplish, ultimate goals are. And because of the dynamics changing, of the simple fact that, yes, the library forged ahead, and they are due a ton of credit for that. There's no question about that whatsoever. I would never take that away from them. And I thank them for that, and I will continue to do so. But it was a catalyst to get the township moving. I know that I had an agenda when I was running for office, but unfortunately, as a trustee, I was not in a position to push the issue. Once I became supervisor, I started to pedal as fast as I can to catch up. And I can pretty damn good peddler if I have to be. Okay.
Rick, as your attorney talked with, I don't know, it was Doug McGossett or Honickman or whoever bond counsel is, have they talked to bond counsel about how long you can delay if
we haven't had any discussion right now, but my understanding, there's no specific limit. Okay, we'll look into that and have answers on that before too long.
But it's not our desire to delay.
No, we're not trying to delay anything. We're just trying to make the right decision.
Right.
Yeah, essentially, there's no delay. I'm going to let this young lady speak.
Joyce Fennel, 6040 North Bryan. My husband is on the library board. My question is, what is your expectation about continuing the building of the library? Are they just supposed to say, okay, architects stop, construction people stop, and wait for the township? Is that what you expect to happen?
Well, we're expecting to get a committee together, and we'll see what happens in the decisions in that committee.
Meanwhile, what does the library board tell their people that have been working
A
on it?
new library is coming. Okay. You'll get to Disneyland. Okay, maybe not this month, maybe not next month.
So do we put the construction and architects on hold?
Well, there is no construction operating, and architects,
They're doing pre-work,
that's just paperwork, like I said before.
but they're charging for it.
I understand that, but there's been a lot of plans that have been made over the years that have been crumbled up and lit or lined to birdcage after the fact. Mr. Powell will attest to that. He's been in the industry many, many years, and so have I. And if for every building that's been planned, there's been 20 buildings that were decided not to be done for one reason or another. and that's what needs to be looked at. There may very well be an opportunity here. He had mentioned, it may be a very good opportunity to, what if the library did something and we piggybacked on top of the library? These are things to be thought about. So, excuse me, okay. So, you would have your cost, and then the township could figure out what the cost would be to add to it. So if you had to spend your dollars to do your building the way it had to be done, as long as that building is designed that it is something that could be added onto, you add a second floor to it, or you put a basement or a lower level underneath it. And the term basement around here is used loosely because the building that we have a concept drawing over there has 12-foot 6 ceilings and all glass walls. I hardly call that a basement. So I would take that position any day of the week. So, but regardless, this is all to start the dialogue, to get things moving. Now, does it take great risk to try to break the logjam here? But I believe it needs to be done, and I believe it's the right thing for everyone in this township, regardless. So I will announce the members of this committee very shortly, and we will set up a schedule of subsequent meetings and start a process. So with that, I'm going to close this end of this conversation. Oh, this gentleman.
One last thing, Mr. Supervisor, if I may, Richard Fessler, I live at 1993 Porter Road. Difficulty sitting in my chair. I've been in government for about 25 years, serving assistant prosecutor, chief deputy treasurer of this county for a period of time, municipal attorney in Waterford, in the legislature for 16 years. When we appoint a committee in the legislature or anywhere else I've been, we're going to do something. And 6 months, we're going to do it 2 years. We appoint a task force, we're going to do something maybe a year and a half. We appoint a study committee. That means, if you believe it, something's going to happen. Otherwise, it's going down the road 2 years, 2.5, 3 years. I'd like to see the board put a time limit on this advisory committee, number one. Secondly, you're talking about a consulting firm. Who's going to pay for that? Library board shouldn't have to pay for it. They're not asking for it. If the library board had not made the move to that property, this board wouldn't have made the move to that property. That's my personal belief. I watched the prior boards buy a piece of property here for a township hall, buy one over there for a township hall, never build one. I believe some of the board members here opposed the bond issue for the library. I believe there is a question of malfeasance and misfeasance as far as putting it on the ballot. We'll see about that. But I would ask you to put a time limit if you're going to do this advisory committee. But I think you're going to have a tough time. You're going to have a tough time. You're making people in the community angry. I mean, I sat here quiet as I could. Finally had to say something. But I think you're going to make a lot of people angry. You're going to have a tough time combining the library and the municipal building because nobody voted for that. You'd have a great time if you started that municipal hall with the library. Now there's a magnet. There's a draw. Same thing that drew you over there by the 25 acres. The library went over there. Build a police department. They need one, new one. Another draw. Certainly should have their own access roads to 59 Elizabeth Lake, or anybody knows that. Fire department. You know, Fisk Farm was bought to build a main fire department under Jim Reed. Okay, never happened. Add it onto this building. So you build a fire department over there. Then other people are to say logically, and by that time you'll have this property to sell. Time to put a municipal building over there. So it may take you some time. I resent the fact that you won't put it on the ballot. Or you want, so you won't put it on the tax rate, the assessment for the bond. I voted for it. I went to the recount. As did several people here. And I think you're going to find, if you delay this, for whatever reason, whatever personal reason, you know, I've heard the taxpayer argument, I understand it. I was involved in it for years. But I think if you delay it long enough, you're going to have some angry citizens out there. When you go for your millage, you're going to have difficulty if you even get it on the ballot. I'd like you to think about it. Like a time limit on the advisory committee, no reason there shouldn't be. If you're really serious about going ahead and having a campus, as Mr. Powell said, and a campus is different from somebody being in the basement, somebody being in the upper floor. Campus is different. You share the driveway coming in, you share parking, you share utilities, a lot of things. But that's different than a two-story building, the library going to the basement. Construction on the building is obviously much different than what would be in a municipal hall because of the steel that's needed, the quality of steel, because of the weight. So there's a lot of things that need to be worked out. I would love to see the library board and this board work together. Not only 10 years, I'm an old man. I like libraries. I want to be able to use it. So I'd ask you to put a time limit on your advisory committee, number one, and seriously think that maybe you ought to put this assessment on that tax bill, so you build a library, and the same magnet that drew you over there, the library, will say to people, we should have a new fire department, we should have a new police department, and we should have a new town hall. You should have. Should have been done 20 years ago. Thank you. Good time.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to conclude that section of the meeting, and we're going to move on to item 11F, which is the Hitchcock Road property. Mr. Roman.
Mr. Supervisor, it's come to the attention of the Community Development Department that the parcel 12-009-476-005 is considered a foreclosed parcel by the Oakland County Treasurer. This parcel is a potential acquisition for parks for White Lake Township. It is in close proximity to the ITC corridor. Township Parks and Rec Plan identifies properties in this area for potential acquisition. And there is a map that's attached to this letter. I can pass it around.
Should be on the back one.
Yeah. This parcel could also function as a neighborhood park and include a dog park or disc golf course. It could also be used for a trailhead space for the future ITC corridor pathway. Because this property is being offered at such a low cost of $4,157, the Township Board should consider this property for a potential acquisition. Our Community Development Department feels that the public benefit that could be derived from this parcel far exceeds the price that is being asked.
What's the size of the parcel, Mr. Roman?
This is 19.64 acres.
And that would cost us how much?
Township would have to pay Oakland County $4,157 for delinquent taxes and fees. We will also have to pay for some title work, and we're still waiting on some legal analysis. We might have some additional reimbursement requirements for tax breaks that were given to the prior owner. I don't think that the total cost would exceed $20,000 for everything. So, and it could be far less.
Okay, questions from the board members?
Yeah, as the Parks and Rec liaison, I will absolutely present this tomorrow night to our meeting. Parks and Rec doesn't have a huge balance. We haven't had a millage in probably 4 to 6 years. So I mean, I think it'd be great. We talked about like a dog park for that side of town. So I absolutely vote yes, but like I say, I will absolutely. I just hope in case the Parks and Rec tomorrow night this says no, that there's potentially could be like a backup plan. I mean, this all been thrown into us in the last week.
Well, that's due to the way that
No,
the
absolutely, yeah.
authority
No, absolutely.
was not by design, it's
No,
by
absolutely, yeah, I'll
policy.
get that, and I will absolutely emphasize that tomorrow. But that's my only concern is we're usually proactive, and we know after our survey, a dog park was absolutely a request, and that was just like a thought for that property.
Just FYI, Andrea, for your meeting, currently the Parks and Rec Department has a savings balance of just over $760,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board members, comments? Mr. Ruggles?
So you think there's a potential that would be liable for the tax breaks that the previous owner had?
Possible, but we've got our attorneys looking into that, so we don't know yet. What I was going to do was ask the board to approve a resolution allowing the supervisor to approve this purchase based on information that we're still waiting on. And I would make that motion not to exceed a total of $20,000.
One of the interesting things that this particular parcel could have to do with the future parcel, irregardless of how it's developed, okay, is that this is a former tree farm. There's $200,000 worth of trees on this thing, folks. And we've got a great big field over there, one way or the other, okay, that could use some nice trees. So we could acquire this and have an arborist look at it and see the economics behind moving those trees. I've seen them move trees as big as mountains, and it is quite capable to be done. So that was one of the thoughts that came to my mind was, again, there's economy here. It makes sense if we're going to buy a piece of land, we need some trees someplace else as part of our development, whatever it ends up being. We automatically have our own tree farm that we could pull some of those trees from and have significant savings to the township, which would more than pay for this property multiple times over. So that was my take on this. So
Just to let the, oh, go ahead, Scott.
I feel like it looks great over there the way it is.
Yeah, that's what I was
Well, I'm
thinking too.
talking out in the parking lot,
Just
and
give me
meetings,
everything.
and places
No,
where I
good
know
point.
Sean's gonna want trees.
Yeah.
So,
Rick, just so the board understands, the township is given the first option to buy this property. If we don't buy it, it is gonna go up for auction and someone else is gonna get it for I don't know how much, but it seems like a golden opportunity to pick up some really nice land for Parks and Rec.
Absolutely.
and it's in very close proximity. It's actually abuts the corridor parcel, of which I know that's a project that's near and dear to you, Mike, and I know eventually it's already starting in other places and it's just a matter of time. And that would make a great stop-off point where people could come and park their car, get on the trail, and have a designated area, a resting or stop area for people to get off the trail and take a break for maybe an amenity or two, and vice versa in the future. So I think it's, I think it would be something that would be worth having in the inventory. Fortunately, you know, somebody's peril is, you know, will work for our advantage. It's unfortunate for them, but it is gonna go to auction. The county will auction it off, and someone else will get it. And will most likely come in and wanna put houses up on it. So, yes.
I'll put that in the form of a motion for the board to approve resolution 17-024 and allowing the supervisor to approve and sign a purchase agreement as well as signing this resolution at a total cost not to exceed $20,000 to come out of the Parks and Recreation Department savings.
That's a motion.
That's the motion.
I'm looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Andrea. Question, Mr.
Under
Paul?
discussion, do we want to state that it's going to come out of the Parks and Rec, or do we want to state that it comes out of Township Fund Equity, Parks and Rec, or some combination thereof, because it hasn't been gone past the Parks and Rec Committee yet?
I'll amend my motion as such. Thanks, Mr. Powell.
It's already been supported.
Okay.
No, man, my support also.
Any other further questions from the board? Okay. Okay, Mr. Clerk, this will be a roll call vote.
Liz?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Mike Powell?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Cole?
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, with that, I'd like to move into trustee comments. Ms. Smith?
Okay. I hope everyone is doing well, surviving this heat. Summer has arrived, so that's great. I did attend the police open house, and it was very hot, but very well attended. And I want to thank the police department for all of their hard work, that they provided this wonderful free event to our community. And if no one's attended, please do your best to come next year. It is lots of fun. And I think myself, Supervisor Kowal, and Trustee Voorhees, I think we served like 400 snow cones. So it was a lot of fun, and we had a good time together. So it's a great event. So thank you to the police department for all their efforts. Yeah. I wanted to mention that the new iron filter in Village Acres is now up and running and serving residents. So thank you, Mr. Potter. I had an extensive tour of it. As I mentioned, it's very impressive. And I know there still might be a few bugs to work out, but we are now serving our residents. So that's good news. It's been in the works for 2 years. So I want to thank this board as well for all of your efforts on that. For the library report, the next regular meeting is June 28th at 6:45 in the basement, lower level of the library. I did attend last week the architect presentation at the Old Town Hall. It was a very good presentation. It was not recorded or televised, but I'm sure the library would be happy to share any of it. They're still in design. They're still in their first phase of design work, so there's a lot of tweaks, and if you still have input, please share it with the library. Their next meeting will be June 22nd at Old Town Hall at 9 a.m., and that will be for a more defined drawing to finalize the concept for site plans and things like that. And then following that, there'll be a next meeting on July 6th at 10 a.m. again at Old Town Hall to go over the drawings as well. So I don't believe there's anything on the website yet, but I do believe they have a paper drawing if anybody is interested in viewing the layout. The summer reading program has begun at the library. I sure encourage you to sign up for that. It's for all ages, and there's something for everybody and a big fun party at the end of the summer. I'd like to, of course, congratulate all of the White Lake grads that have graduated this year, and best wishes to you. I'm sure lots of people have been attending graduation parties, and we've had a lot of graduates here in White Lake. I did mention the property map is on the wall across from me if anybody is interested in familiarizing themselves with that. I attended, along with most of the board, the pancake breakfast at White Lake for Memorial Day, and that was wonderful, and that is a fundraiser for the fireworks, which will be July 1st, and I think Andrea can probably share a little bit more about that for the Citizens League. And there's also fireworks on Cedar Island, just as a reminder for everyone to have a fun and safe 4th of July. There was a very nice Memorial Day ceremony at White Lake Cemetery, and I just want to thank that small group of very dedicated citizens that had put on a very nice ceremony there. And I want to just make one comment about the Civic Center discussion. This board, I heard a lot of mentioning that they didn't quite feel prepared. We weren't sure how that discussion was going to evolve, so I hope to have many more discussions. I too am in favor of very efficient and effective meetings and having a deadline on that. This board does have a fiduciary responsibility when it comes to those bonds, so I would like to see a timeline on that. And then I do want to thank Dina Potter for all of her work at White Lake Township, and I want her to know that she is very appreciated, and wish her well. Thank you so much.
Andrea.
Thanks, Liz, for the nice compliments on our little presentation that we do at White Lake Cemetery. My grandparents started that. My grandpa was the first person. I'm the third generation to do it. I actually think there's four and another Voorhees cousin that I do it. But thank you, Liz. So every Sunday of Memorial Day is sponsored by our church, White Lake Presbyterian Church, on Sunday at noon. We do it every year at the same time. You can hear my craziness. In regards to the fireworks for the White Lake that were sponsored by the White Lake Citizens League, July 1st, we're a 30-minute presentation with two barges that go off on Ridge and like Woodcroft, if I'm thinking of the correct road. I would invite you to my house, but the 10 people that I'm coming is all I really want to deal with. And I also want to thank Chief Keller for having my 7-year-old neighbor who's had the first adventure at the police department open house. He pushed a lot of buttons. He was in the car with Officer Way. He loved it. He didn't have the wonderful blue hand that I had, but he loved it. He will absolutely be back next year. And next year, Liz, Rick, and I, and it's pretty much just me, we're getting the whole township board to turn blue hands with me. So I'm going to push you guys all to help us next year. So bring your blue hands. Bring your clothes that you can get dirty because it washes right out.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to, seriously, I'll pester you to help us out for even a half hour. It's just fun to turn blue and get sprayed by Larry Sheldon as you walk by the tank.
Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on one thing that happened last month. I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but at the meeting there was transfer of our solid waste collection. I'd like to talk about that for a minute. A couple years ago, this board reviewed a number of companies that submitted bids to collect our waste in White Lake. And there was a committee that was formed that reviewed every contract and took a lot of things into consideration, not just dollars, but performance, reputation, relationship, history, et cetera, et cetera. And we issued a contract to Republic on those merits, not to be taken as something of value and sold to the highest bidder. You know, they're selling the services that they're going to provide to the residents of this township. If the residents of the township wanted GFL, we would have hired GFL. If we wanted Rizzo, we would have gotten Rizzo. But we wanted Republic, and so we gave Republic a contract. And apparently in that contract, they have the right to sell that contract to whoever they want. I was unaware. Apparently they pulled one over on us, because that's not the intent at all. If we wanted somebody else to perform it 2 years later, we would have given them a 2-year contract. But no, against our wishes, they're just done and they've sold it to whoever they deemed responsible for us. We didn't decide that we want GFL. It's forced on us now. GFL, who is now the owner of Rizzo, and I assume that they own more of Rizzo than just their equipment. I have a hard time believing that they have no management that came with that company. They have nobody from. I'm assuming they have people that they inherited the employees, they inherited the management, they inherited everything that came with purchasing Rizzo. So now that's who we have. I'm very much opposed to this. I can't believe it's happened. If we want, like I said, if we wanted somebody else, we would have given them the contract. But no, Republic has sold it, and here we are. So I just wanted my opinion to be heard, and I really wish that Republic would have continued their obligation to us and to the residents of what we perceived was going to be the services that we agreed to. So here we go for however many years is left. I hope that they do a fantastic job. And I personally will do more due diligence the next time that we issue a garbage contract, because this is ridiculous. Thank you.
Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I too attended the library meetings, and I learned a great deal at the library presentation to the public. I think my only concern with that is for the library. It's very difficult for many people to go to a 1 o'clock in the afternoon meeting, a 9 a.m. meeting, a 10 o'clock in the morning meeting. It's very difficult to have. You remember my statement regarding the scheduled time for the hearings of the subcommittee. And it's disconcerting to me that the library board seems to jump around and have meetings when most people are working, or they're getting their kids out of the house for school, or whatever. And so I just urge the library board to do something and have a meeting time set, preferably in the evening sometime, where the public could actually attend, and it could be published, and at that time, each time, instead of jumping all over the place, almost like a shell game, and that's a concern to me. And so, but I very much enjoyed. I got a lot out of it, and I am certainly much more aware of what the library has been doing with the building and the siting and all the rest of that. I also wanted to state that my grandkids were absolutely thrilled at the police open house. And their eyes got the biggest as the helicopter was taking off. They've never been that close to a helicopter before, so they sat in the helicopter, saw all the buttons and everything, and then watched it take off. And that was just a thrill to them. They probably, all three are going to become police officers now, probably. I had, when we approved the minutes tonight, Mr. Supervisor, I forgot to give some kudos to Amy, our recording secretary. Those minutes were spot on, and they were like books at these public hearings. And Amy, you did a great job. Thank you very much for that. There is, I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals as well, and we had 2 agenda items this past month. One resident, one builder, purchased 2 homes up on Jackson Boulevard, Jackson Road, and he wanted to put one large house there. The ZBA did not feel that the size home that was being requested was proper, so they unanimously declined or denied that opportunity. The builder was very upset, did not treat the board very well, and the ZBA knows how to handle that, but certainly there was a threat for lawsuits and individual lawsuits to the people on the board and all that kind of stuff, and so we didn't have to go get Chief Keller, but there was concern of the residents that turned out regarding that for their safety as the builder actually left the building, and so there is an advantage to having the police department close by in a campus type setting so we can protect our boards. The other item we gave, let me go back to the original one first. That's a zoned R1D, and the maximum size home you can put on our R1D lot is only 20% of the area of the lot. So I live in a home much larger than what you can put on that lot, and I'm looking to downsize. But on a 20,000, on a R1D lot, when you can only put a 2,400 square foot home on for building a new home on a lot like that, and you need a 2-car garage minimum, and if you live on a lake, you might have a boat, you might have a snowmobile, you might have an ATV, you might have all the toys, and pretty soon you have a 1,200 square foot or a 1,000 square foot house on the footprint on that size lot. So you can end up with the minimum size of an R1D lot's 12,000 square feet, so you can only have a footprint of 2,400 square feet. So you put a 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 square foot garage on that, and now you only have 1,000, 1,400 square feet that you can build a home. And those of us that want a master bedroom on the main floor, on an R1C lot, it's 16,000 square feet. You can only have a 3,200 square foot ranch, including the garage. I touched base with the with the planning department, and they said, really, this board might want to consider. They didn't state it that way. I asked how to maybe look at this, and it might be advisable for this board to have the planning department and maybe planning commission just revisit and see whether or not in today's economy and in today's society, whether or not that percentage coverage of that lot might need to be massaged just a little bit. And so that was certainly one of the variances requested from this this fairly irate businessman in White Lake Township. The last item that I wanted to just say is that in this in all the water usage out there today, please, let's be careful around the lakes. We read about people drowning and getting hurt, so let's just be cognizant of that and those of us are getting a little older, maybe we don't dive off 100-foot cliffs and things like that like we used to. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
You don't heal as quickly.
We don't heal as quickly, that's correct.
Mr. Lilly.
I haven't got much to say. Actually, I had more to say tonight than I thought I would. And I again apologize to the library people that I was not prepared tonight to make any comments other than to listen your move forward. And like I say, I believe in that. But the one comment I do made, and certainly it seems like the library board has overextended itself time-wise with this purchase of this property that I still don't understand why they went ahead with that, but again, at a later date, I'm going to ask those questions. But irregardless of overextension or not, there's ways to cure those problems, and I think the dialogue will be beneficial to help any time period that might need to be extended to. And I do agree with what Mr. Fessler and Liz said tonight. Forming the committee, there needs to be specific guidelines and projects done and time periods done so that there's a clear direction of where we're headed, whether it's a year from now or 9 months from now or whatever, that the library's going to know that this is the time period. And even as you indicated in the condominium type development, maybe if it's going to be one building that their section is built ahead of ours, and ours will be able to be attached to it. I mean, all of these things are going to be items of discussion, so I really looking for a positive outcome to this in a reasonable amount of time. So,
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Roman.
First, want to thank everyone for attending tonight. We'll never all agree on everything, but if you're here tonight, it's because you're passionate about White Lake, about keeping White Lake a great place to live, which it is. Wanted to add on to Mike, your comments about the library board meetings, and Liz, maybe you can help. I noticed, I know it was one of the last board meetings that they had, there was no agenda anywhere. Do you know if do they typically not have an agenda?
For the
As
regular,
far as
they have an
like
agenda for their regular board meeting.
Yeah, do they put it on the website, do you know?
I believe so, and it's passed out at the meeting. You can get one at the meeting if you attend.
It would, yeah, it would be helpful because on the library's website they post the fact that there's a board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It would really be helpful if there'd be like a link to get the agenda so that you'd at least know what the topics were. So.
Okay, I'll make a note of it and let them know. But if you do attend the meeting, there is an agenda available.
Okay. And then finally, I just wanted to give you all some more good news. In about 2 weeks' time, I'll be mailing you all your tax bills. That's all I had to say.
Hard act to follow. A lot has been said here tonight. I think there's a lot of conversation that needs to take place and continue. I don't necessarily think anybody has any bad ideas about anything. I just think my dad always said there's really no bad ideas, just some ideas are better than others. And that's what needs to be looked at. That's all it is. It's just to be looked at, not to make an error in any haste of passion of trying to do what it is that you want to do, regardless of the parties involved. So I thank everyone for coming to the police open house. We did have a good time. 800 and some odd hot dogs?
A lot of dogs, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And all I know is every time I grab a bag of ice or a snow cone, Jason would yell at me, "Throw me a pack of dogs." So I was like doing double duty. But that's the kind of commitment that we have to our community. We want to make and continue to our community, is to get the younger people engaged in what's going on. It was great to see all those kids there. It was fantastic. So, you know, these kids don't have issues. We had an issue today with a student who had some issues at school, and an officer was able to kind of help that kid out, I think, and just kind of smooth things out. So there wasn't that fear of the police, and that's the kind of bridge that we need to build in the community, because you look on the television today and you turn around and these people are throwing rocks at the police, or, you know, every other thing you see that's going on. And this is not how I grew up, and it's not how you grew up, okay? And my person to look at was a big Irish Detroit cop, okay? And he's the one that taught me how you act when you get pulled over by the police officer, and all these types of things. And he was a good influence on me, and he kept me out of trouble, because if he didn't, he'd have put his foot where the sun didn't shine. But that's just the way it was. Now things are a little different, but it's nice to know that we have officers that have that compassion for these kids, and we want them, when the kids have a problem, we want to know what's going on in our community, and it's important to us all. So, with all of that, I say thank you very much for coming to tonight's meeting. We're going to go into executive session. Mr.
I'd like to make a motion to recess into closed session to consider attorney-client privileged communication in accordance with MCL 15268H.
Support. Yes, support. Roll call vote. Powell. Mr. Powell.
Roll call vote, Mike.
Yeah, but he just got the second. He hasn't started calling roll call yet.
Mr. Holloway votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Colwell?
Yes. And we'll take a 5-minute recess. More like 10. Thank you.